Yogi Berra had a saying. Actually, he had a lot of sayings, but the one I'm thinking of now is, "It ain't over till it's over." Baseball is perhaps the ultimate game where you truly cannot declare it over until the actual conclusion. With no clock to run out, anything can happen until one team records that 27th out. And thus, baseball has had many incredible comebacks over the years, and especially in the postseason and the World Series. But the flip side of an incredible comeback is, for lack of a kinder term, an incredible choke. Teams that had a win right in their grasp and let it slip away. The 1986 Boston Red Sox being 1 out away from winning it all, only for Bill Buckner to live in infamy. The 1997 Cleveland Indians becoming the first team to lose a Game 7 that they led in the 9th inning. Or even, no, we're not talking about that! But it is some irony in at least having to mention that, because the team that on that day in 2011 pulled off maybe the single greatest one-game comeback in World Series history also has on their franchise record the biggest total collapse in the history of the Fall Classic. And as a bitter Rangers fan, you can be damn sure I'm gonna drive that knife in on this to remind fans of that team that their history has not always been coming up in the clutch. I'm Rowdy C, I'm an ugly American, and this is how the 1985 St. Louis Cardinals committed the biggest choke job in World Series history. While the New York Yankees might be the most hated team in all of baseball, the most frustrating team, if you're not a fan of them, just may be the St. Louis Cardinals. That's because this team is known for being freaking cockroaches. Too many times, they simply will not go down. If they are one game away from being eliminated from the postseason with 3 games to play, you just feel like they'll find a way to win those 3 and keep going. This can be traced back at least as far as 1964, when they came back from being 6.5 games behind the Phillies with only 12 games left to win the National League pennant. They have played in 11 Game 7s in the World Series in their history and won 8 of them. If that's not a record, it's gotta be damn close. How frustrating to the rest of baseball has this team been? 3 times in their history, the Cardinals have won the World Series against a team that never won a World Championship in that particular city. It really seems like in almost every decade, St. Louis has been hanging around baseball's elite at one time or another. And in the 1980s, the Cardinals might have been baseball's most consistent team. Whitey Herzog assembled a club that scratched and clawed their way to wins in about as old school as you can get for the time, relying on dominant pitching, speed on the base paths, and timely hitting. They won the World Series in 1982, winning the last 2 games to take the series in 7 against Milwaukee. Then, despite trading away their clubhouse leader, Keith Hernandez, a year later, they were back in the race in 1985. They won 101 games that year, holding off a 98-win New York Mets team to win the National League East. Yes, back then, the Cardinals, playing in the city known as the Gateway to the West, played in the East Division. All because the franchise insisted on being in the same division as the Chicago Cubs, and for some reason it was a better idea to put both of them in the East instead of the West, and thus Atlanta and Cincinnati were put in the West. Baseball has made some stupid moves before. Regardless, the Cardinals were all set to face the Los Angeles Dodgers in the National League Championship Series. However, after 4 games, not all was going well for St. Louis. Not only was the series tied at 2 games, but the Cardinals had just suffered a loss greater than either of those 2 games. Rookie star Vince Coleman suffered a broken leg when he was run over by the team's automatic tarpaulin machine that had been moving to cover the field during a rain delay prior to Game 4. With a team that relied heavily on manufacturing runs one at a time, the speed of someone like Coleman, who stole 110 bases that year, was irreplaceable. Still, the Cardinals found a way to fight on in that series. They won Game 5 on a walk-off home run from Ozzie Smith off of Tom Niedenfuer, which was the first time in his life, in nearly 3,000 at-bats at that point, that the switch-hitting Ozzie had ever hit a home run batting from the left-hand side. Then in Game 6, the Dodgers were one win away from forcing a Game 7 when Niedenfuer and Tommy Lasorda chose to pitch to slugger Jack Clark, representing the winning run with first base open.
And he hits one to deep left field, and that one is gone.
The Cardinals won the game and finished off the Dodgers to win their second pennant in 4 years, as many people had expected them to do. However, the team they would face in the World Series was not averse to major comebacks either. The 1985 Kansas City Royals had come from 7.5 games back to win the American League West, only to then fall behind 3-1 to the Toronto Blue Jays in the American League Championship Series. It should be noted that had this been any year prior, this series would already be over, and the Blue Jays would have clinched the series. But 1985 was the first year when the League Championship Series was extended to best of 7. The Royals proceeded to win 3 in a row, capping off the series with a 6-2 win in Toronto to claim the American League pennant. By the way, if you ever think your team's home field is not great, watch a replay of that Game 7 and see for yourself just what a terrible facility the Toronto Blue Jays had to play in prior to 1989. Woof! So the 1985 World Series is set, hosted completely by the state of Missouri with Kansas City and St. Louis. 2 cities separated by less than 250 miles along Interstate 70. And just like the regular season and ALCS, things did not start out well for the Royals. The Cardinals won the first 2 games in Kansas City 3-1 and 4-2. These weren't blowouts, but the lead in games was still significant, especially since at this point, no team had ever lost the World Series after winning the first 2 games on the road. However, in Game 3 in St. Louis, Bret Saberhagen found his groove again, pitching the Royals to a 6-1 win. The Cardinals responded with a 3-0 win in Game 4. Once again, the Royals were down 3-1 in the series, and the Cardinals were 1 win away from being world champions. But they couldn't seal the deal on their home field, as Danny Jackson and the Royals pulled off another 6-1 win to send the series back to Kansas City. The Cards had only 5 hits in Game 5, went 1 for 6 with runners in scoring position, and were shut out for the last 8 innings of the game. Pretty significant for a team that had led the National League overall in batting average, on-base percentage, and runs scored. So here we are, Game 6 at Royal Stadium. If the Royals have anything on their side besides the home field, it's that they'll have their 2 best pitchers for these potential final 2 games. Charlie Leibrandt gets the ball in Game 6, with Saberhagen set to go in a possible Game 7. And to his credit, Leibrandt gets the job done, holding the Cardinals to just 1 run in 7 2/3 innings. Unfortunately, it looks like that won't be enough, as Danny Cox and Ken Daly hold the Royals to no runs in 8 innings. As we go to the bottom of the 9th, the Cards are 3 outs away from ending the World Series. And with manager Whitey Herzog going to his closer, Todd Worrell, the Cardinals get off to a great start, getting leadoff pinch hitter George Orta to hit a grounder to first base for the easy first out. Wait, what? Did I just see that right? Did umpire Don Denkinger call Orta safe at first?
Looks like he's out. From that angle, let's take a look from this one. Again, Clark with the toss. Oh, yes. think there's any doubt about it.
Whatever, it's only the first batter. The Cardinals can still work around this. Look, they still get the first out here when Steve Balboni hits an easy pop-up in foul territory.
And Clark comes over to the dugout with Porter, and Clark doesn't know where he is.
Oh boy. I think just about everyone watching this game immediately started seeing that they were about to witness baseball's version of a train wreck. Having been given new life, Balboni gets a base hit, and now the Royals have the first two runners on. Now it's here the Cardinals do catch a break. Jim Sundberg tries to bunt the two runners over, but he bunts too hard and to the wrong side of the field, and the ball goes back to Worrell, and he's able to get the out at third. Now, it's first and second with one out. You get a double play ground ball here, you win the World Series. Also, that's Jim Sundberg, a 34-year-old catcher representing the potential winning run. Not exactly the fastest guy on the base paths. You should still be just fine, as long as you don't do something stupid.
Get ready, everybody. He's about to do something stupid.
That gets away from Porter, and the runners move up.
So apparently what happened was this. Darrell Porter called for a fastball and then went to push his glasses back up because he was sweating and they were falling off his nose. Not realizing that by putting his hand to his face mask, he had just given Worrell the signal to switch pitches. So Worrell threw a slider, and Porter wasn't ready for it. So now, it's as if Sundberg had successfully sacrificed after all. The Royals have the tying and winning runs in scoring position with one out. The Cardinals have no real choice but to intentionally walk Hal McRae to reset the double play and put a force on at every base. Still, they have one more thing going for them here. The pitcher spot is up for the Royals, because this was back when the World Series alternated each year between using the designated hitter or not. The last guy left for the Royals to pinch hit is Dane George, who batted .223 for the season and had only one other at-bat in this series. You can do this, right?
And that's a looper hitting the right field for a base hit. Concepcion scores. Here comes Sundberg. Here's the throw. He scores. We go to a 7.
So yeah, Dane George was the predecessor to Francisco Cabrera. And for the Cardinals, it was absolute disaster. It wasn't just that they could not hold this lead, they failed to do it against the bottom of the Royals lineup. Dick Howser had to use 4 pinch hitters and 2 pinch runners in that 9th inning because of how little faith he had in the bottom of his lineup hitting Worrell. And the 3 pinch hitters who actually got to bat all got on base. Multiple opportunities to get those last 3 outs even after Denkinger's missed call at first, and the Cardinals just found ways to not get them. And yet, after all that, after one of the most insane endings to any World Series game at the time, the Cardinals still could have easily won Game 7. Sure, the Royals were sending Saberhagen to the mound, but the Cards were countering with John Tudor, who was 3-1 in the postseason and had held the Royals to just 1 run in 2 games in this series. You can get the job done here, right?
Balboni is going, and the pitch is again drilled to left field, hooking down the line, and gone!
They could not get the job done here. Tudor gets hit for 5 runs in 2 innings, and then has to be taken out when he punches a wall and cuts his hand. The other Cardinals pitchers fare no better, as the Royals hit the Cardinals in Game 7 almost as bad as Buster Douglas hit Mike Tyson in the 10th round. Whitey Herzog and the Cardinals choose to take out their frustrations on who else? Don Denkinger, who happened to be the home plate umpire for this game. In the 5th inning, with the Royals already up 9-0, who does Herzog go to? The incredibly volatile Joaquin Andujar, who had been hit for 4 runs on 9 hits in Game 3. What happens next is one of the most unprofessional, embarrassing acts in the history of the World Series.
Whitey's gone. You can see that coming. Now things are really getting very heated now, and out of the dugout they come. And the Cardinals are venting their wrath on the umpire. The Cardinals just don't know what to do right now. And it's inside ball 4. So they're loaded up now. And Andujar's thrown out of the game, and they better get him out of there. They better get him out in a hurry.
And with that, the rest of the game and the series go quietly. The Royals win 11-0, tying the record for the largest blowout ever in a World Series Game 7, and they at long last have their World Championship. And the Cardinals? Suffice it to say, they chose not to lose gracefully. Joaquin Andujar and other players destroyed the visiting clubhouse, smashing toilets and other objects with baseball bats. Despite such a collapse, the Cardinals did make it back to the World Series in 1987. Once again, they can't finish the job, losing the series to the Minnesota Twins in 7 games after they had a 3-2 lead. They were the first team to ever win all of their home games in the World Series and still lose the series, as 87 was the first year every World Series game was won by the home team. Despite having more chances over the years, it would not be until 2006 that the Cardinals would finally win the World Series again and reclaim their reputation as a team that often finds ways to win in the end. But for many older Cardinals fans, the sting of 1985 is still there. Don Denkinger remains reviled in St. Louis, with many blaming him alone for the Cardinals' loss, even though it's clear the team's performance was plenty to blame. Remember, they had a 2-0 lead in the series before even setting foot on home field at Busch Stadium. They had won 2/3 of their home games that season, only to lose 2 of 3 at Busch in the World Series, with the 2 losses by an aggregate score of 12-2. They scored just 6 runs in the last 5 games of the series, with half of them coming in Game 4. Had the Cardinals won that series, they would have set a record for lowest team batting average in the World Series by a team that won the series. But that poor offensive performance came back to bite them, as they scored just 2 runs in those last 3 games and chose to lose all their calm and composure once that missed call occurred. Ultimately, the St. Louis Cardinals only have themselves to blame for why in 1985 they had the biggest choke job in the history of the World Series.